Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mitch Taco Bell. I am your host for Tall Tales with Taco. It is Tuesday. Thanks for joining us tonight. I tell you what, this is actually really cool. I met this gentleman almost 23 years ago as a new hire here at my airline, and he and his beautiful wife were sitting at the airport, and I heard her accent, and I started talking to her, and next thing I know, I find out that he is an SR-71 pilot. We work for the same airline. We become friends. And tonight you're going to talk to a man that flies faster than the speed of heat. I always joke about that, faster than the speed of heat, but an SR-71 pilot. And how many guys can say that they know somebody that can go is the highest you can go in a manned aircraft and the fastest as well? Tonight you're going to meet that person, and it's Colonel Rich Graham. Rich, I want to welcome you to Tall Tales with Taco, and I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. How are you?
Well, thank you, Mitch. I'm glad to be here.
Did you guys survive the cold over there?
Yeah, our house came out undamaged. Fortunately, we know a lot of our friends didn't make it. They've got water coming through the ceilings, into the floors, ruined this, and they're looking for another house right now.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, let's hope that we never have to face that again. But the lack of heat, as a matter of fact, I'm going to have a guest on tomorrow night, Bill Fortune, who wrote a book called 1 Second After, and it's about life after an EMP pulse and no electricity, which we kind of experienced that, you know, when you think about, I mean, 3 days over here, no electricity, and you just go, how do you live without it? It actually becomes pretty important. But, you know, when we were talking about having heat, you are the heat miser. As an SR-71 pilot, I mean, how much heat was generated off of that thing? But I was going to take you back. The folks don't know you are a Air Force. You came into the Air Force in 1965, if I remember right.
Correct.
And you flew as an instructor until you picked up a slot in the 70s, 1970, as an F4 pilot, which is one of my favorite airplanes. What a fantastic plane, as a matter of fact.
It is good.
How did you like that? You were in C's and D's, right?
C's and D's. The first year I was at UDORN in a triple nickel, that was basically air to air, air to ground with the F4Cs.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got into the wild weasel business when I went to Okinawa, Japan after the year at UDORN, and I became a wild weasel in the F4. And then that got me back to Karate, and we augmented the F-105 weasel. So the F-105s and the F4, we flew together in formation for about the first 2 months. Then we did our own thing, so to speak. But then we would have a 4-ship of 105s and a 4-ship of F4 wild weasels. I enjoyed the weasel.
Jeez. How many missions did you have total in North Vietnam?
A total of Vietnam, but for the year, and then the 6 months at Karate, came out to 210 combat missions.
Wow. Getting shot at left and right with poles. I actually have a photograph of you.
Oh, that was our Dick's. We named it Dick's Peace Machine because my name is Richard, and also, if you remember, the president at the time was Richard Nixon.
Right. So you go from F4s to the SR-71. How is that process? How do you even find out about it? Because it's a top secret program.
Well,
but how do you apply?
When I was flying the F4, and then when I fly the F4 Wild Weasel, we were all PCS at Okinawa, Japan, at Kadena Air Base. Well, the SRs were already over there. So we'd meet the crew members over at the bar, and you start having drinks and talking about it. And the more I heard about the program, here I'd flown the F4 for all that time for about 5 years all total. And I said, it's about time to look for another airplane. And I talked to some of the SR crew members, and they said, well, here's how you apply for the program. You're no different than anyone else.
So it's kind of like a little fraternity, though. You do a rush, and
yep.
And you already met the guys at Kadena O Club, I'm sure. So that definitely helped.
Had a little bit of up on the when you go, once you decide you want to try it out for the SR program, you have to put in a big package about this thick of all your OERs, your efficiency reports, all your flying records. All this goes to the Beale. And they have a group that meet about 2 times a year at Beale, and they decide here's a stack of pilots, and here's a stack of navigators, and they take that stack and it goes around a whole table, and everyone at the table has a say, a yes or no on the front cover. And I know all this because I was part of the process after a while. But they put a yes or no on the outside. And if you make it all around the table as a pilot with all yeses, you then get invited out to Beale for a 1 week interview. And now you got to pass that.
And what do they do? Do they
Yeah, I got
stick you in a spacesuit to see if you're claustrophobic? And
no, they don't do that. They the week at Beale, your first 2 days, basically, you interview with the wing commander, the vice wing commander, the squadron commander, the DO, everyone that has a vested interest in meeting you and make sure you cut the mustard, so to speak.
Mhm.
And then that's the first 2 days. Then the day 3 and day 4, you get evaluated in the T-38 with evaluators. They want to see how your airmanship is, basically. And you go up and show them what you can do, what you can't do. And the very last 2 days, you go down to Travis Air Force Base and you take a very, very difficult. It's much. If this is the Air Force physical, it's about right up here. It's not quite up to the standard of an astronaut, but it's real close, man.
Sure.
You got to pass that. So then you go back to where you came from, and I went back to Okinawa and kept flying my F4s. And then 5 months later, I got a very nice letter of acceptance to the program.
That's cool. So pretty neat. How many SR-71 pilots have through the entire time? Do you know the exact number?
I have a list. I maintain a list of those who are still alive and passed away. Now I'm gonna narrow this down because there's a lot of people have had a flight in the airplane. There's a lot of people who didn't fly it operationally. So the list I have for those who flew the SR-71 on operational reconnaissance missions, it's 96 pilots and 96 navigators.
Wow.
All the way from 1970, that'd be 1960, 67 to 80. I'm sorry,
Jeez.
to 90.
96 guys. That's amazing. I mean, in combat, yeah.
Now, if you look at the list of people who had a ride in the airplane, one ride or maybe two, but never flew it operational, and I make this line, I cut it. I said, I'm just going to get the operational pilots who flew the reconnaissance mission. So that leaves out all the test pilots, all the ones down at Palmdale that tested the airplanes, but never flew operational. So,
okay, well that makes sense, but still, very elite club. I mean, you are I have to say, knowing you are the elite of the elite of the elite, and then below that, my friend Huggy, and and Huggy and those guys are the elite of the elite of the elite. In terms of my admiration for how fast you would go and how high you would go, there are no records that you guys that you all have accomplished that somebody else has been able to beat.
They haven't been beaten yet.
Yeah. So do you mind? I mean, I remember in England in '89 standing at Mildenhall and seeing the guy was standing at the counter and he goes, "Oh, I do believe one of your American SR-71 Blackbirds is about to take off." And I'm like, "What?" And I ran over to the window and I saw this guy just come out and right down the runway, and off he went, and he was gone. And I thought, wow, that was cool. I got to see one, Take us through that. So you get suited up, and that suit that you wear, I've got a picture of it. This is the suits that you wear, right?
That's the suit. That's Don Emmons, my backseater, and that's me as a young pilot.
Yeah. What's the stuff? It looks like almost like man boobs. But what are those things? Those pouches there?
Those are your inflatable life raft. Basically, if you go in the water, Pacific Ocean, they automatically inflate to keep your torso upright.
Oh, gotcha. All right.
We had one gentleman back in the testing days, one of the test pilots, civilian, on the SR prototype. They ejected out over the Pacific Ocean, and he drowned in the Pacific Ocean because the swells coming over him were way too great, and he just took water. Once you get water going into your suit, it's a self-degenerating scenario because now the water goes down to your feet and it's trapped, and you go down further and further. So they said we need something around the torso to keep you afloat.
That makes sense. Now, like didn't the B-58 Hustler have a compartment? So when they ejected, they were as a compartment. You guys didn't have Yeah, you guys didn't have a compartment, did you? I mean, you ejection seats.
No, you come down the ejection seat just like you saw me in that picture there with the helmet on, obviously.
Oh, you know what, folks haven't seen that here. Here we go. You guys can check this out. Look at that. Look at that young guy. What a handsome young guy.
God. Yeah, you can see the microphone there right in front of your lips, and then now I'm just breathing ambient air, so it's not locked down like it should be. And once you lock it down, you then breathe 100% oxygen from then on.
Yeah, and your cabin altitude is like 10,000 feet, so you can't really raise your visor up, can you? I mean, would you in flight if you had a real bad itch, or?
No, we had setting this. The setting in the cockpit could either be set at it's sort of escaping me. I think it was either a 14,000 foot cabin or an 8,000 foot cabin. We always kept it at 14. That way, if you did have to eject and you came out of a 14,000 psi cabin, then you wouldn't have to. It wouldn't be as great going up into the atmosphere as opposed to 8,000 foot cabin.
And so that you're like in your own that spacesuit. You're your own cabin.
Yeah, your own environment's right there. That's it. Everything.
That's amazing. And how long? All right. So I was going to say, take us back. So you get suited up in the spacesuit. What do you do for preparation in terms of? You obviously don't eat Mexican food or beans, but what do you do preparation food wise so that your body kind of adjusts to a clock where you don't have anything going on upstairs?
Yeah, we have the same things the U2s have. Basically, we had it's like a big squeeze bottle, plastic bottle, and it had a nozzle on it. And I always took up lemonade and Gatorade to drink. And if you pick up food, we had tube food to keep you nourished. And I took up the beef and gravy and the macaroni and cheese, 2 tubes of those. So whenever you're ready to eat, you just get right here in the bottom of your pressure suit helmet. There's an iris, so it keeps pressure inside. But if you push your tube food through there, you could then get your water, your Gatorade, or your food.
Did they let you keep your helmet?
So what's that?
Did they let you keep your helmet?
When you leave?
No, when you retired, did you get to keep a helmet?
No.
Oh,
that's too expensive.
All right, so you get suited up. You're out in your little space suit like a astronaut, and you carry your little suitcase with oxygen or something to take care of your body and cool it down. You get inside the jet. You strap in. The guys strap you in.
Yep.
Do you actually start in the hangar and then taxi out so you get an immediate takeoff?
Always start in the hangar and then do all your pre-checks and then taxi on out. And then we do a run up at the end of the runway for about, we had to hold each engine for 30 seconds while it recorded. On board the SR was a tremendous recording capability for maintenance folks. Mm-hmm. So we would do a static run of 30 seconds. It could have been a minute. I can't remember. 30 seconds per minute at full military power, and it downloaded and recorded all the parameters at the static condition. Then you bring it back to idle and do it with the other engine, do the same thing while it got recorded.
Now, was that sent back automatically, or is it recorded and downloaded later?
Yeah, everything on the airplane, everything you say, everything it moves, or pressures, or PSIs, or airspeeds, everything on the airplane is recorded every 3 seconds. Everything.
Wow. So then you take off, and how fast do you go from standing still to takeoff?
Once you release the brakes, then hit both afterburners, and you're probably about rotating out, I'd say, in seconds. I'd say it's probably 14 seconds later, you're starting to rotate. 15 seconds, maybe.
And how fast are you going by the time you suck the gear up?
You raise the nose at 210 knots. I'm sorry, 180. You raise the nose, and you get airborne at 230.
Oh wow!
And those are the numbers you remember, because once you get 230, you can now lose one engine, and you still have capability of keeping it upright. Rather, if you didn't lower it, you don't have enough rudder authority to keep it going.
And hope you have enough altitude to be able to pop the nose down and pick it back up. So then how high would you go for the refueling? The mid-20s?
Yeah, 25, 26, 27. That's generally the normal altitudes that the tankers were up. The tankers had a hard requirement. They had to be in position 30 minutes prior to our arrival. So they get up there and they figure out the drift, the orbital pattern, and then we had between the two airplanes the KC-135Q models, which were your fueled special KC-135s. We had electronic needle, a bearing pointer, and a DME to the tanker. And in turn, they had a DME and a pointer to the SR-71. And it was a very classified secret way of going back and forth that the bad guys couldn't jam or get any information from.
And how many tankers would it take to fill the bags, so to speak? Because people don't realize the skin, you all leaked a lot of fuel, and plus afterburner taking off, you burned a lot, right?
Yeah, it holds 80,000 pounds of gas total. 6 main tanks, all down the fuselage, and then once you get out to the wings, it goes about a quarter of the way out of each wing. So tanks 1 through 6, and the burn was tank 1 and 6, 2 and 5, 3 and 4, and that way you kept the CG always same by burning outward and inboard. So that was the burn.
Now, did it do that automatically for you, or did you have to manually?
You could do it manually, but the auto transfer worked out great. Yeah, every once in a while you'd have to take a little bit more out of one tank, and that's not a big deal.
Could you feel it in the controls?
No, because it was all geared up with a CG, and it just sort of matched it all the time. So the airplane always felt the same.
So how long would it take for you to get up to altitude, that magical altitude, let's say 80,000 feet or whatever you all were at?
After you came off the tanker, you got your fuel load of gas and you stroked the burners. We did what was called a dipsy doodle. You would take the airplane from the tanker, and you start up at full military power. And this is about 27,000 feet. When you got through about 30,000 feet, you then go into full AB. And then while you're in full AB, you'd push the airplane over and go down in a very slight descent. So you always want to go through the shock wave and the descent. So once you got through the shock wave, 1.1, 1.2, then would pull it back. From then on, it's all supersonic.
Wow.
It's the most fuel efficient way to get through the sound barrier and save the most fuel by doing this little dipsy doodle back down.
So when you get up to altitude, you're not in full burner, obviously, but would momentum you're in full burner the whole time?
No. The whole climb is full afterburner. When you start leveling off, then you start bringing it on back. Yes.
And what would your endurance be like at cruise?
I'd call everyone an hour. From the time you level off until you're getting ready to come out of afterburner and start on down, you've got about an hour's of cruise.
So it's not like you can go fly over Moscow and back. I mean, maybe you could at Mach 3, I guess.
No, we never did that.
But you could definitely, all right, so you could go fly for an hour, get your shots. And the camera system, I mean, they're talking about the heat on this thing's over 500 degrees, why it was corrugated. I find your airplane fascinating. And if people don't know, you really need to, I just watched a history program on great warbirds, and it was the SR-71, and they were talking about the experimental A-12 and corrugated skin. So explain to people about the titanium. The titanium deal is a great story, how we got it and where we got it from.
Well, the titanium was originally, there wasn't enough in the United States to build the airplane. So the CIA, this is back when it was called the A-12. That was the predecessor of the SR, the A-12. So that was
that single pilot guy?
Single pilot. That's the CIA, and they were the predecessor of the SR-71.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have enough of the ore to make the titanium for the airplane. So they found out and went through a third world country, which happened to be Australia. And they had a company in Australia buying this titanium alloy. It's sort of like sand, basically. They find it along the coast area. And they were buying it from Russia, taking it down to Australia, and we were in turn getting it to the CIA.
I take it we make our own titanium now, but but yeah, Incredible deal. So they build it, and the skin on it, it can't be smooth because it would cause it to warp or something.
Yeah, it's got. If you look at the wings, they're very corrugated like this, and the whole the airplane is meant to expand because it's going to, from the whole length, it's 106 feet long,
Mm-hmm.
from the nose to the tail, about 106, could be 107, but it's going to expand totally after you get it fully hot. It's going to grow about 8 inches, the whole airplane. I mean, everything. I mean, this 8 inches doesn't sound like much, but when you start stretching all the plumbing, all the wiring through this airplane, they had to take it all into concern.
That is amazing. And I read somewhere where I mean, you think about it, all right, 500 degrees, that's melting stuff. How do you keep the cockpit? How did you keep the cockpit cool and the avionics and stuff?
Well, that was all done with the air conditioners. We had a very good air conditioning system coming off the engines, and I could control the cockpit whatever temperature I wanted, and so could he. We both had our own different. The back seater could set whatever he wanted, and I had my own temperature up front. So we could also change the pressure altitude for the cabin if I wanted to make it less pressurized or more pressurized.
And what benefit would that give you?
It's mostly, your concern mostly is ejection. If I eject at 80,000 feet, I want my cabin atmosphere as close to 80,000 as I can. If I have it down at sea level and I eject at 80,000 feet,
Sure. Oh, yeah.
your body's going to know it big time.
Yeah.
So you always try to get it. We typically flew with a cabin altitude of about 18,000 feet, somewhere in there.
Right, right. And I read somewhere there was 32 of them made, and about 12 of them were lost. Do you know any of the guys that ejected safely out of those things?
Some of the guys early on that ejected out of it during their training out over Arizona and stuff like that. Yeah, everyone got out. We've only had 3. Let me make sure I get this right. We've had 3 deaths. 2 of them were flight test engineers, and one of them was a crew member. Yeah.
I mean, that thing's so fast. You don't have a blast shield, or you don't have your compartmentalized. So what's it like going if somebody were to eject at 80,000 feet at Mach 3? Can you survive that?
Yes, you can. Very survivable. What happens when we have a big loop that's right between your legs, and when you pull it up about that far, you're going out of the airplane. The first thing that happens is obviously your canopy has to go first.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't sequenced with the back seat either. It wasn't like the F4. We could have a sequence between the two. He could go first, or I could go first. And it's something your back seater. You've flown with him for the same guy for 7 years. We don't mix and match crews. So I knew Don, and he knew me. So when you first pull the ejection handle about yay far, the first thing that goes, obviously, is the canopy.
Right.
So it goes, and away it goes. And immediately thereafter, a ballistic charge underneath your seat goes kaboom, and it takes you up to about 1 foot with a big kaboom. And there's a lanyard that's attached to the bottom of the floor. And as it reaches that 1 foot, it then pulls a pin out. It ignites the rocket motor, and then the rocket motor does the rest of it. So, about a foot is all ballistic, and the rest of it's all rocket to clear the tails.
That is amazing. Yeah. You ever have a time that you thought you were going to have to eject? I mean, do you have any one of those moments?
I never had anything close to that that I thought I'd have to. No emergencies I can think of. It was a very safe airplane once it got out of the early days of the development of it. It had a pretty good record.
I joke the B-2 bomber out in Guam took off, and the guys ejected, and the plane crashed. And I kept thinking, at $3.2 billion a piece, when the guy pulled the ejection seat, I could see the wing CO coming on the screens and going, try harder, try harder. No. A little video pop up as they're trying to eject. Come on. I'm sure that never went through your mind, though. I mean, hey, they just build another one. What the hell?
Yeah.
Navigation stuff. I read somewhere that you guys, especially for the heat that was generated around the aircraft, they had a navigation pod back behind your Rio, or what would you call him? Your backseater.
RSO, Reconnaissance Systems Operator, RSO.
RSO, and that used star. It worked off a star's celestial navigation.
In the back, right behind his cockpit, is a big unit. We nicknamed it R2D2. And R2D2 was a navigation package. I would say, if you look at it, it's probably 3 feet by 3 feet, and probably tall. It's probably maybe 4 feet tall, maybe 3 feet. But inside of this navigation system, we called our ANS, Astro Navigational System, ANS, is a star catalog of the 64 brightest stars of the Northern Hemisphere. Got a Julian date of the year programmed into it. The Julian day is January 1st is 1, January 2nd is 2, so on, all the way around to 365. So you've got the month in there, you got the day of the month, and it has a chronometer, a clock that's accurate to 1/100th of a second. So you know this R2D2, inside of it, it's got a gimbaled tracker. It's a star tracker, and it's going to look through a quartz glass on the top of the airplane, highly polished glass, and it's got a catalog of the 64 brightest stars in the Northern Hemisphere. And it knows basically if you're flying out of Okinawa or flying out of Mildenhall. So it knows by a catalog what you're going to start. But by the time you started in the hangar and taxied out and backseat or turn on the ANS, you'd have a star lock on in about a minute and a half of taxiing out on a clear day. Obviously,
in the daytime too. I mean,
daytime, yeah. And then once the star tracker locks on to 3 stars and everything's working, it always kept the SR-71 within 300 feet left of course and 300 feet right of course all the time, every time, at any speed.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean,
it needs those tolerances of 300 feet left and 300 feet right, because you may be up at 80,000 feet taking pictures, but everything's programmed on the airplane being where it's supposed to be.
Right.
And, 700 or 300 feet left or 300 feet right, that could make a big difference or where it's going to be looking at.
Sure. That makes sense. Do you have any good war stories about there I was at an altitude that's classified over a country I'm not allowed to tell you, and all of a sudden, I see this.
No, I never saw any SAMs. I've seen, we have a mission that goes right through we call it our bread and butter one. You go through the DMZ in Korea. You can either come in from the southwest and go to the northeast, do 180 and come back, or you can come around and from the northeast and go to the southwest and go back and forth. So we always covered the DMZ quite a bit. And there was a time frame when the North Koreans, they weren't firing SAMs, but what they were doing is putting up these massive balloons. They were just putting, I don't know how they timed it, but you can see these balloons, and as a balloon gets higher and higher, it gets bigger and bigger up at the altitudes we're flying at. I've seen a couple of these big things up there. Now they say that they're using them for weather reconnaissance, to get information. But I'm sure the way it was coming across the DMZ that they were hoping to get one of us to poke it.
Yeah, years ago, I was in Omaha, and they had a reunion or party or something. Somehow I ended up in this guy's hangar, and I met these 2 SR-71 guys that flew probably about the same time you were. And they said, "Hey, could you give me a ride home to the hotel?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." They're liquored up pretty good. And I gave him a ride back, and I asked the guy, I said, "What's the scariest thing you ever had?" And he goes, I was sitting there flying along over North Korea, and one of these balloons, they said the cable was attached to a big concrete block at the bottom, and it might be like 1.5 miles long cable.
Yeah.
Trying to get you guys. And so this thing's up there flying along, and he goes, all of a sudden that balloon went by me, and it was so close. He goes, they couldn't have missed the wingtip, the left wing, by 2 feet. Wow. And he goes, by the time it went past me and my brain processed what it was, all of a sudden I'm in my suit, just like hyperventilating, because all of a sudden I realized, man, if that thing had hit me, I would have atomized at our speed. And somebody would have knocked on the door to my wife and said, "Hey, man, your husband, he's missing in action, disappeared somewhere."
He's in the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, we don't know where he is. But did you never had anything like that
No,
those things come close?
I had three MiG-25s come up to try and get me. We were flying out of Okinawa, and we were going up to. If you look at Russia on the far west corner or west end of it, there's a place called the Kamchatka Peninsula.
Hmm. Is that where they shot down the Korean jetliner?
At the very end of the Kamchatka Peninsula is a place called Petropavlovsk. We call it Petro for short. And the nuclear submarines, and they also had a nuclear facility up there. And we would routinely go up and image the place. We'd take off out of Okinawa and would fly over to Japan, get another refueling, climb back up, and then head on up to Petro. And you would image it off to the left, do a 90, 270, come back around, image it off to the right, and then back home to Okinawa.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on our way up there, it happened to be a perfect day, and we're cruising 75, 80,000 feet. I don't remember the numbers, but I told Dawn in the back, says, "Hey, Dawn, something's strange up here. I've got these little circles. There's something down there making a circle. It looks like a contrail." As I got closer and closer, I could actually see three separate contrails in a clockwise orbit. Mm-hmm. And I told Don, I said, "Don, turn on some of your cameras." The backseater has what we call happy snaps. He can take cameras anywhere. He can look at fixes on the ground, or he can take, one shot at a time of pictures. Right. So I said, "Get your cameras ready. I think they're going to come out of a circle and come at us." And that's what they did. They came out of their right-hand circle. And as I got probably within 150 miles, remember, that's a long ways out, but I'm going damn fast. Uh-huh. So about 150 miles out, they came out in a trail with each other, probably, I'm guessing, 10 to 15 miles trail, and they were still contrailing. And I said,
how high do you think they were?
Well, I'm guessing they were probably around 25 to 30. And then I saw the contrails disappear on each one. I said, either that's because they lit their afterburners or the atmosphere has done it. Well, I found out later they hit the afterburners and they started popping up to us. Uh-huh. And I told Dawn, I said, "Here they come, just head on." And the closure rate was so darn fast. There was no way they could get a lock onto us. And he took a picture. He says, "There goes number one." And he took a picture. "There goes number two." And when we saw the pictures at the end, you could see these MiG-25 just falling out of the sky.
How high do you think they got before they waffled?
They got up to 60 at the most. I don't know. We were up at 80, 85. The thing that most people don't realize is, the MiG itself, 25, and the ones today have some pretty good capabilities. But let me ask you, if you were a country and you were going to build air-to-air missiles, would you build air-to-air missiles in a bunch just to shoot down an SR? No. These are the normal fins on a regular MiG-25, and those things at 80,000, 70,000, where the air is so thin, those fins on the back trying to make a turn, they can go full for deflection, and nothing's going to happen. They're going to go ballistically. So just knowing what the folks at the Intel folks tell us about the MiG-25's capability, there was no way they were going to get us up there.
What about Big Sam's?
Oh, Sam's that's different. Yeah, Sam's different. Sam it's got some radar and some lead and all that stuff. Yeah, they've got some fins on them.
Did they ever shoot a SAM up at? I think you said no, but anybody in your squadron ever take a?
No, the only one that's actually recorded before my time, when the SR first came out back in the 1977, 78, they were using it a lot out of Okinawa going into Hanoi. Mm-hmm. And those guys who flew those, I think probably half of the squadron probably saw SAMs being fired at them.
That's amazing.
Never been hit. No, now I'm going to use a term. They've never been hit by a SAM, but one crew, and I forget his name right now, when they landed and the crew chief did his post-flight of the airplane, they found one little BB, a bullet, or if you will, a little BB from one of the SAMs, and it got in the tail way in the back. It just just barely punctured it and stuck in there.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's amazing. That was probably, very rare event that those guys would ever have anything like that.
That's what we call it'd take a magic bullet to get you, I think.
It would take about 3 states for you to do your turn, right?
Yep.
Everyone always jokes about. How about that LA to speed or the LA speed check? I hear that on YouTube and Facebook. That story.
That's true. Yeah, I've heard it too. It's pretty good. It's best. If anyone on the audience there, just get on there and talk about. Just type in LA
Speed check.
Speed check with SR-71. It's funny.
Something I always wondered when I was over in Kadena. Habu, I know, is the snake out there because we would go out looking for caves and stuff, and you had to watch out for the Habu. But they called them Habu over there on the Westpac. But what do they call them on the in Mildenhall?
No,
Did they have it? Yeah, is it the same thing? Who came up with Habu? Do you know?
It's a legend, so I can't confirm it. But the legend goes that when the SRs first went over there as A-12s, remember the A-12? That's the CIA. They were there for just short of a year, and during that year, I think they flew. I'd have to look at my research stuff, but I think they flew 16 or 18 sorties. When the Okinawans, who are very superstitious, the old Okinawan men, they very, very superstitious, some that I got very friendly with when I was over there, they would put the sky and they'd say, Habu, Habu. It's because the Habu snake is a very black snake. It's very lethal. And they point to the sky and they'd call it the Habu. And that's where it picked up the nickname.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. How cool is that?
Yeah, we always had a pickle jar of a Habu over at the Okinawa Nerd detachment over there.
Do you guys have permanent? You all have permanent quarters? I mean, would you have? It's pretty top secret, right? So,
we stayed in a regular BOQ. It was called the number of it was 318 on Okinawa, and over at Mildenhall we stayed in the just the transient, officers clubs quarters. But they always at Okinawa we had 3 crews all the time. At Mildenhall, we had 3 crews all the time. You stay there for 6 weeks. So you go 6 weeks at Mildenhall, you go back 6 weeks to Beale, where your family is, then you go 6 weeks to Okinawa. Then you come back from Okinawa for 6 weeks, then over. That's where your whole life was. My life was for 7 years, 6 weeks at each place.
Oh, wow.
So 12 weeks, obviously you're gone. And twice a lot of marriages took some hits from that. A lot of guys thought their wives could handle it, but they really couldn't.
Well, how did you meet Pat, your wife?
I met her over at Mildenhall. I came down from, I was single then. I came down from flying and the SR. And one of the civilian tech reps, we have a lot of civilian tech reps that maintain the very sophisticated sensors that no other airplane uses. So one of the tech reps and I play tennis a lot. And he says, hey, I got a girlfriend. And I'll get her to get a girlfriend on, we'll play mixed doubles. I said, fine. Well, that's history. That was her.
So 5 kids and 4 grandkids later, right?
Yep. And 3 great grandchildren.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations, Rich.
And we're still playing tennis.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I love your wife. I remember sitting in the, I think it was DCA. I think we were in DCA trying to get back to Dallas when I met you, and that was back when I was a new hire 7.2 engineer. But I remember just sitting there listening to your wife, like, "Are you from England?" "Why, yes, I am." I'm like, "Oh, hey, how are you? I'm Mitch. Nice to meet you." And then you came back. I think you were buying a cup of coffee, and you came back and sat down. We started talking, and that was just a few years ago. Well, you did SR-71s from 74 to 81. And they took them out of service in 88, right?
Yeah. Actually, 89, close to 90. And then they took them out of commission completely, and then they reinvented them back in 1994. They brought them back.
Did they bring you guys back as contract guys?
They brought back 3 airplanes, and then they got 1, 2, 3. They brought back 3 crew. I might have been 4, but I think 3 crews came back that were originally crews that closed it down in 1990. They just got who wants to volunteer to go ahead and come back for this, and they got combat ready. And what they were doing is there are a lot of people in the Senate. They said, hey, there's a need for the airplane. We might have closed this thing down a little premature. There's hot spots all around the globe that we just can't get to with satellites. So let's bring them back. So they decided to bring back 3 airplanes and 3 crews, and they reformed down at Edwards Air Force Base because that's where the airplanes were last sent to. And that's where all the bits and the parts and the pieces were down that area. And
Right.
so they reformed down there and had another detachment for a year and a half. And during that year and a half, nothing happened around the globe and they were never used operationally. The guys kept flying training sorties.
Right. And then NASA was using them for something,
Yeah.
right?
NASA picked them up in '90 as well, and they used them for high-speed, testing of different materials. And there's another project called Linear Aerospike Engine that they put on the back of one of them too. They tried that.
Right. And didn't they do one with a drone? Let's see. I got a picture.
The drone program.
I got a picture of this thing with a drone, little drone peeking around the corner there.
That's the D-21.
And what is that thing?
Well, the D-21 drone was mated to the back of a A-12, which is the single seat. That's the CIA version.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when they said, we don't think we're going to be using this for going over high threat areas. So how could we get the intelligence over deep into Russia and deep into China? And they said, Kelly Johnson came up with it. He said, let's make a drone out of it. We can launch it off the back of the A-12s. So what they did, they modified the A-12 and put a back seater in it. Remember, the A-12 was CIA single seat only. So now they launch control officer in the back of an A-12, and he's the one that's going to actually do all the launching of this drone. They would take the drone up to 70,000 feet. Mm-hmm. Mach 3, and they would do a very slight pushover while the launch control officer released it and ignited it while they were just sort of pushing over very slightly, and then it would go on its own path. They did it 5 times, 5 missions, went deep into China, and the theory was once you launch it, it goes through the area you want. A C-130 would come along with a boom, with a snag, and international waters would come out and it would catch the parachute, and you got your intelligence. Well, it turned out that a couple of them didn't work that easy. They never covered it. But of the ones they did cover, they got the intelligence, but it wasn't all that meaningful. And for some reason, the program just died on the vine. That was it.
Right.
We actually lost Kelly Johnson lost one of his test engineers on one of the missions out over the ocean and the Pacific. He drowned in a suit because the swells were too long. What happened was they did a launch. There's a testing out over the Pacific with Johnson's civilians in it. And when they did it, it didn't get a clean separation. The drone came off to the left and it wiped out the rudder of the mothership. And those guys ejected. The pilot, they both went down to Pacific. They picked the pilot out of the water, okay, but the backseater died. He never made it. So at that time, and that was the very last time they ever launched the drone on the back of the A-12. Then they shifted to B-52s. They took a B-52G model and put big pylons on the inboard pylons to accommodate the drone, and they launched those 5 sorties into China off the B-52s.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that makes more sense. I mean, they launched the X2 and all those things off a B-52.
Say it again.
I said that makes more sense. They launched the test bid with the B2 or the not B2,
B-52.
X2s off of the B-52s.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know what I'm talking about. The X2 rocket the test bed, the NASA test X2.
Yeah.
Did you ever get a chance to meet Kelly Johnson in person?
Oh, he had come up to Beale all the time. I got when you fly the airplane, you get your Mach 3 card. Mm-hmm. I'm very lucky. I got mine signed by Kelly Johnson. He did a lot of signing of Mach 3 cards down at Palmdale. but he happened to be a Beale mine. He signed mine right up the Beale. Very nice. I treasure it. It's sort of like a challenge coin when you go to the bar. If I go to the bar and there's other SR guys there, and I pull out my Mach 3 card with Kelly Johnson, if they don't have it, guess who pays for the bar?
That is so awesome. Well, now with COVID, we're kind of talking off air. You've been doing more speeches via internet now than live speeches, haven't you?
I do. Most of my live speeches are around the U.S. and when we go over to the U.K. a lot. My wife she was former British, and we got a daughter over there. I get a lot of speaking engagements in Sweden, Denmark, France, Germany, and England. But with what's going on because of COVID, I'm getting more speaking engagements on Zoom and Teams. I can't believe it. And the neat part is these people are from all over the world. I mean, this isn't just located in England or something like this. This is everywhere.
Do you ever have a Russian Meg guy go, I chased one once. Look in your logbook. See if you were flying on this date.
I'll tell you a story about that, though, if you're ready for this.
Yeah.
I used to go to, I don't do it anymore. I used to go to Oshkosh for the big air show every year. It's one of the greatest things you ever did. I went like 15 years in a row with my wife, and she was working for an artist, and I was sitting there, and I met a lot of neat people. But I always gave talks up there. And I got done with one talk with the SR-71. This is probably back in, I'll say, 1995 through 98, maybe. And I'm giving a talk, and I'm going back to the booth where my wife is working with the artist, and I'm selling some of my books that I've written on the SR. And lo and behold, this guy comes up, and I recognize him because I'd seen him before. He's the guy. Do you remember when a MiG-25 defected out of Russia and went over to Korea? Not to Korea, but to Japan.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the pilot of that airplane was showing up all the time at Oshkosh, and he heard my talk, and he said, let's go eat and have some lunch. And I cannot believe to this day, this guy is still alive in the United States. You know, you hear about someone getting killed for this, or he drank something that, or whatever. But here's a guy that took a MiG-25 from Russia, flew it there. We took that airplane completely apart and put it back together, and then we turned it back to the Russians, and we learned every little iota about that thing. And his name was Blanco.
Yeah, right.
Victor. And I saw Victor up there every Oshkosh. We always made a pact that we would get together and have lunch one time while we're up. And he never cared about anyone being around him. He wasn't looking over his shoulder or anything.
You don't think the KGB was ever after that guy for the defection?
He's still alive.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he's still alive. Yeah.
That is amazing. Well, we've got some time for some questions.
Okay.
Pop one up here for you here. Rick Irving asked, how much downtime for maintenance after a mission to be ready for the next flight? I heard there's a lot of required maintenance between missions.
You know, I could sit here and talk all day long about the missions and how neat it is. And everyone thinks it's really nice and sexy and all that. But I'll tell you what, these men and women who take care of this airplane, they do a yeoman's job of making this thing safe for me to fly every time. If you land, and we have your airplane is what we call Code 1. Code 1 means it has no write-ups whatsoever. So all you got to do is put the replenishables in, oil and gas, basically. Mm-hmm. If you came out of the Code 1 airplane, it took them all through the night to the next day to get the airplane ready. And this is all through the night. And that's if you didn't have any write-ups. If you had write-ups, you might have to take another airplane. But if you read anything about the SR and its capabilities, you learn real quick that this airplane can bite you very, very fast. And if things aren't going right. And these maintenance men and women took great strides and pride in keeping this airplane Code 1 all the time. You know?
So on a debt to Kadena or to Mildenhall, how many SR-71s would be stationed over there?
We always kept 3 at Okinawa, and we always kept 2 on Mildenhall. Now, what's the regular question from that?
how many of them were operating, right?
No. Your other question is, well, why 3 at Okinawa? Why 2 over at Mildenhall all the time?
Why?
Well, it's because Okinawa, if you've been there, and those who have been there, it's just an island, and that's all salt water around there. And the salt water and the atmosphere is so caustic, it
Okay.
plays havoc with anyone's airplane over there. It's stationary. Even the P3s the Navy had, they had to go through special.
We went through the baths.
Yeah,
Yeah, we had a big bird bath that we would drive the C-130 through, and everybody else would go through as well.
that's it. I mean, the salt water others played havoc. So we had 3 airplanes over there and 2 over at Okinawa all the time, every time. We swapped them out once a year.
And so where
One airplane would come back, Beale, and the other one would fly over. One would come back, one would fly over.
well, we said there was what 30. I said 32 built, 12 were lost. So you'd have 3, 2, and then the rest of them in Beale.
You had 3 at Mildenhall at all time, Okinawa, and you had 2 over there, so it's 5. And if I just think about the barns, there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Probably had 10 hangars there with SRs in them. So that's 15 right there.
Wow.
The rest of them were down at Palmdale going through different phases of inspections. We had 1 hour, 100-hour inspections, and then they have some complete teardowns where they actually take it all down and put it back together.
Yeah, I read somewhere that when they reactivated it, they had to reverse engineer some sort of cooling plan or some thing that they had on there. They couldn't just make one. Nobody knew how to make it. They had to reverse engineer this piece.
I wonder what it was.
You mentioned it actually when we first started. It was some kind of intercooler, some sort of intercooler thing. I thought you mentioned it. I read that somewhere that they had to reverse engineer.
It wasn't the liquid nitrogen, is it? The cooling down the
tires.
Liquid, yeah. Well, all 6, the 6 main tires, the 2 nose tires were 400 psi gaseous nitrogen in them.
Wow.
Yeah, 400 psi.
Got one other thing here. Let's see.
Robert
says, "Hi Taco, hi Rich. Check this out. The next SR-71 or the 72 with scramjet tech with possible top speed of Mach 6. And then none of this possible without the SR-71 guys. Thank you." That's pretty cool. I know that they've got some stuff out there that's probably so high speed and so top secret. Did you ever? I asked Huggy this. Did you ever see anything that was out of the ordinary when you were up at altitude? A UFO. Did you ever see a Tic Tac or anything back then that you just went, "What the heck was that?"
No, I'll tell you one thing. A lot of the times the stars, if you're going to mission, like going up out of Okinawa, going up to Korea, and going through the DMZ, and then doing a 180-degree turn out over the ocean and come back. When you go to those turns, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, you look up at the sky, and when you're in that bank, 35-degree bank turn, or maybe 40, you can't tell the difference between the stars and all these fishing vessels down there, 80,000 feet below you. You see all these lights. So it got very disorienting.
Did they ever upgrade them with GPSs? Will Grant, he's a Marine, want to know that.
No, the accuracy of the ANS, the Astro Tracker off the stars, it's so much better than a GPS. And it doesn't rely on anything. I mean, there's nothing you can jam or anything like a GPS. I mean, it's internal to our airplane.
Oh yeah, that's cool. And Nomar is he's the one who gave us that shot from the museum today. Hey, thanks, I appreciate that. That was really cool. And Brent's got this. I have his book and his autograph. Great American. So now I've got to buy your book. I've got to come over to your house and get you an autographed book, and I'll give you a coin when I get those made. Let's see. I think that's. Well, I think that's it. Do you have any other kind of cool vignette stories that you tell on your talks that people would be interested in hearing?
I talked about the MiGs coming up. I had another one. This is back when before we were permanently at Mildenhall, we were going over there on little monthly jaunts. The first one was in like February, March of 1976. And the next one was in September of 76. I happened to be on that second one. And this is when we just sort of get a feel for it. We weren't there permanently or anything. We were just doing a few missions, going up around Murmansk and coming back and see what the capabilities were. And I'm going up to Murmansk, and I level the airplane off. You level off about 70, 71,000 feet. And you start bringing the throttles back a little bit, get the fuel flow about, 20,000 pounds per hour per engine, so about 40,000 pounds per hour. So everything settled down, and then the speed, it just kept going faster. Mach 3.1, 3.2, 3.3 is our max. That's our absolute max. Right. It's got 3.2, and I said, geez, I told Dawn in the back, I said, I can't believe this. I can't even level off. It's so cold up there this particular day in September. I had to climb. I went from instead of leveling off at about 70,000, I went up to 75. Mm-hmm. And I got to 75, I brought the throttles back, and that thing just starts accelerating. It's getting faster. So I get up to about 80,000 feet, and I finally got up. The lowest I could get and still fly this at Mach 3 was 85,000 feet. I had to level off at 85,000 feet, and then I could finally be in control of the airspeed.
Jeez.
It was amazing, just totally amazing. Just most people don't think about going too fast.
And I asked Huggy that. What is the altitude to be an astronaut? I mean, to get the astronaut wings?
Oh, it's a lot higher. I think it's 100. I would say 120, 130,000, something like that.
Well, I think they need to lower that. I think they need to lower that. You guys deserve astronaut wings. Seriously. Well, Rich, I can't thank you enough for coming out and joining us with Tall Tales with Taco. It's been almost an hour, and I promised I'd keep it right at about an hour for you. And I can't thank you enough. You have any plans? Anything that you want to talk about? Your books?
Nope. I got five books I've written on the SR. Ironically, each one's 5 years apart. So for 25 years, I wrote 5 books. If you want to get one and you want me to autograph it, you have to get it for me. It's on sale on eBay, but you have to be sure that the seller's ID has to be SR-71 pilot, 1974 to 1981. That's me. And then you'll get my autograph, and I'll write whatever you want. You want it for a gift for somebody, but if you buy them from somebody else, I can't sign them, obviously.
Right. To Taco Bell, the world's best C-130 pilot. I wish I could have gotten gas from you, but I was a little bit too fast. Yeah. Well, listen, Rich, you give Pat a hug for me, all right? And tell your family I said hello, and look forward to seeing you. And I'm at the schoolhouse every other month. I'm flying on the line on the 7-3. So maybe one day I can get you in there. And, Paul Ward, if you ever make it out to San Diego, you got to go visit this guy right here, Paul Ward. He works as a docent on the USS Midway, and is him and one of my good friends, Glenn Williams, his dad, Don Williams, they're buddies and they're docents out there. So if you get a chance, if you ever go out to San Diego, let me know. I'll get you hooked up with Paul and Don Williams, and you guys can go get a private tour of the ship.
That'd be great. That'd be great. I like that. Yeah.
I mean,
get rid of the COVID, and I'll be on the road.
Yeah, Paul, if you're listening to me now, Paul, does the Midway have an SR-71? I can't remember. I think the one up in New York does.
Yeah, that's the only one.
The Intrepid, right, has an SR-71 sitting out there.
It's an A-12.
Oh, is it an A-12? Okay. Yeah.
Singles.
Right. And I mean, how many? There's 35. So are there any outside the country, or did the United States keep them all just inside?
No, there's only one. It's over in England. It's what's their big aviation museum? It's down in Cambridge. Oh, I go there all the time. Duxford Imperial War Museum. That's where there's an SR-71 over there.
Do you get invited quite a bit to go to the RAF club and talk?
Well, we go over there because my wife, she was a Brit, and so we have a house over there. We have her daughter over there. So when we go over, I go over for a month and a half, and do a lot of speaking engagements. I always do 2 speaking engagements down at Duxford all the time. They're good to me, and I enjoy it.
Do you go up to the RAF club in London?
I've been there. I've done it twice. In fact, a month ago, I was supposed to be there
Yeah.
That's a nice place downtown.
Oh, I love that. That place is beautiful. I've been in there. I should just showed him my ID, and the guy's like, "Yeah, sure, mate. Yeah, go ahead, walk around." I'm like,
What
"Hey,
it?
that was cool." Yeah, very nice. Well, listen, sir, I'm going to go ahead and pull you off. I can't thank you enough. I'll send you some links, and look forward to seeing you around the pattern, maybe around the airport.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, until then, we'll talk to you soon. All right.
Bye-bye.
Hoorah, Colonel. Folks, I hope you enjoyed that. Rich Graham, SR-71 pilot, as I told you, there are not many of those guys. And to hear him talk about it, 96 crews total out there flying around the SR-71 in combat over the number of years that thing was in service. It's just amazing. It's like winning a lotto ticket, having him on the show. Plus, I always find that kind of fascinating, have to wear a spacesuit to work. It'd be kind of difficult. Well, once again, thanks for joining me, Tall Tales with Taco. If you got a chance tomorrow night, I don't think you're going to want to miss this one. There's a gentleman I know, Bill Fortune, and Bill wrote 1 second after, which is a story 1 second after an EMP pulse hits a terrorist blow up over the United States, Europe, and Japan. And it throws us back into the medieval days. So if you get a chance, listen to the show tomorrow night. It's going to make you think about what you need to do just to prepare a little bit. Just be prepared for power out being 3 days, a week, a month, kind of start getting that going. Well, adios, hasta luego, a wiedersehen, tschüss, shesheni, au revoir, domo arigato gozaimasu, tanno shinde kudasai, ciao, arrivederci. I will see you guys tomorrow night. Until then, you have a great day. Be safe. God bless you.